Hello and welcome back to the Timeline Astrology podcast with myself, Gary O'Toole, and my guest today, Kishori. Kishori has been with me before as we talked about her Song of Rahu, the epic poem that she's written, as well as Rahu in the first, second, and now we're going to talk all about Rahu in the third house of astrology and what that might mean. Kishori, just to remind you, is the keeper of the carousel, luminous dreamer of dreams and weaver of webs. Superfluid shapeshifter, catalytic converter, spinner of tales, singer of songs, dancer of desires, lover of the leela of life, wild night rider who never grows old. Super contemporary creator of the state-of-the-art designer software for the evolutionary mind. And I think that description of Kishori, and she'll explain also in this podcast more about what Kishori means, is really appropriate for Rahu in the third house and what the third house suggests. So I really enjoyed this conversation with Kishori, and I hope you do too. So welcome back, Kishori. We're going to talk. Well, hi, how are you?
First of all, yes, I'm really good, and it's always a pleasure to talk with you, Gary.
Likewise. I always look forward to this conversation. Like we do it every couple of weeks, and I always look forward to it. And I think every couple of weeks is good as well because it gives me time to digest the previous one, and then start to look forward to the next one. Last time we talked about Rahu in the second, and this time Rahu in the third. So maybe I'll just give a really quick recap of what third house is, and then we'll jump straight in. So I don't want to just list things though about what the third house is, because it might just sound very sort of, well, how does that make sense and how does that connect with that? So maybe I'll just talk about how the significations of siblings, brothers specifically as well, ties with courage and communication. So that they're all the things that the third house, basic things, are said to represent. So the inner significations, and houses of astrology always represent something inner, something outer, and then a person. So it's like the inner is courage, the outer is communication, I guess communicating, and communication in all aspects as well, not just verbal, but written. So the written word is third house. And then the person the people are siblings. And I guess thinking about it, like when we're growing up, the other thing is neighbors. If you don't have siblings, of course, it's neighbors, and like you play with your neighbors, right? It's all about play as well, and interaction and communication, and how you learn these things when you're a child. How do I play this game with this child or whatever? But also, how do I stand up for myself, right? How do I engage? And the other thing about the third very significant thing is about sex, okay? Because it's interactive, and the natural third sign of the zodiac is Gemini, which is in Sanskrit it's called Mithuna. So it's all about intercourse and interaction. So that's basically the third. I hope that makes sense. And now it'd be great to talk about how Rahu in the third behaves, we could say, or how we could approach it in whatever way you feel. What are your initial thoughts?
Right. Wow, that's a mouthful, isn't it? But actually, it's very clear, and you've summed it up nicely. And we can begin with the whole of that. When you take it to the heart field, it becomes a whole different ball game. And for me, it's like the quantum heart, that everything is possible and everything is smooth, and it becomes a place of simple contrast rather than conflict. So it's the fun of having different colors and different flavors and different pleasures and different enjoyments and interactions. So they become expression of the heart field. And as you know, one of the descriptions of the thing I explored, I started calling it communicating from the heart. And so we'll look at all of that, how playing from the heart field or within the heart field affects all of those with adventure and play and courage and siblings and neighbors and sexual partners and love affairs, and the ultimate love affair, of course, being the union of the conscious and the unconscious, or the pre-conscious, or the beyond conscious, if you like. So yeah, it's exciting.
It's interesting because the other thing I wanted to mention now that you bring that in about the unconscious and the conscious, and how the third house opposite the ninth, it's like it's said to be the lower mind as opposed to the ninth house, which is the higher mind, which, you know,
Uh-huh.
it's kind of like seen as how we work it all out in our head. So it's not just communicating outwardly, obviously it's communicating, you know, what are we speaking to ourselves, what's the internal dialogue going on.
So speaking in the mind, maybe we're speaking about what I would call mind in separation, mind that is not rooted, or at least casually rooted, shall we say, in the heart, because you can't escape completely from being what you actually are, your nature, which is the heart. You know, what gives a humanity that bias towards loving expression, harmonious expression. I mean, it's still, we still are the heart, whether coherence or chaos appears to be happening. It won't affect the fundamental nature. It can't. There's only one thing to look at or to be. But the expression, we as human beings, I sometimes feel that like consciousness comes into form to make those choices for what we love, rather than going around in circles and having a chaotic experience. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
heart communication makes it simple.
This is the other thing I think when we get into Rahu now in the third, how, you know, because I feel like I'm always in these conversations playing devil's advocate, playing the sort of Rahu character to your, you know, other side of it. And it's kind of like, um again, it's maybe it's the astrology, like it's my background, so it's I am very familiar with how the labels of Rahu are very contracted, like we've been talking about. Like I'm always looking at that side, and you're opening my mind up to this other dimension. Like it's like going into a house and there's this door and it's just always left ajar. So you kind of know that there's something on the other side of that, but it's like the door is left ajar and you don't ever walk up and, oh, and literally you've opened the door wide open and I've gone in and it's like, okay, this is a whole other big room here. Actually, it's vast in here, right? So that's kind of what I think about in terms of the third house. It's like it could be with Rahu very constricted in many ways. Like communication could be affected. And the other thing about that, of course, is that the third house is not just verbal communication or written or whatever, it's listening also. It's a back and forth. That's why I'm saying it's interactive. But that could be constrained or constricted in some ways for some people. And that's why I think, okay, this is bringing you the problem of Rahu in the third, is that it's like the inability to hear other people and being very opinionated, for example, right? So that is feels to me like a very constricted state anyway. So maybe you could maybe tell us about the opposite of that.
Yeah, fortunately, astrology always has those little gaps, if you like, the little Sundays, the little spaces, so that we can move from the door being just a little crack open to being fully open. You've got, so even though you may have Rahu in a particular house, in the third house here, you're not only Rahu in the third house, you are many other flavors and experiences all woven together from all the other. Fortunately, otherwise, if we were just stuck as Rahu in the third house only, my God, that would be a bit hard. But you have the ninth house as well. So you have what you call the higher mind. I suspect that is the opening to what I call the heart field, or the state prior to form at all, prior to existence, shall we say, in form.
That's really interesting because the third house obviously leads to the fourth house, and the fourth house is literally the heart.
Yes.
Right. So it's everything leads to something else. So it's like when we say the third house, it's like what piques your interest? What are you interested in? Like you say, like what are you interested in? What do you love? You know, it leads to the next.
Yeah, I see really clearly what you love, what you say, what you love, is what you put your attention on, what you are giving life to. So when you put attention, you're bringing it into form. You know, it's like the double slit experiment, you know. Every time you give attention to something, the manner in which you give attention modifies your result, your experience. So that if we remember, that's the thing in the third house, you might, for the mind might forget about the door is just a breath and the door is wide open. But if we stick with that as a kind of collapsed particle, right? And we forget the waves, and the waves are always there, always lifting us into other spaces. So stabilizing some aspect of your mind, some practice, knowing that heart frequency, that you can't, unless you develop your intuition and your knowing, and you give it attention, it doesn't expand, doesn't grow. And yet the third house, as you said, is about growing and expressing and communicating the more. So the third house will automatically, as you say in astrology, let's just lead on to the next thing. The heart field from in which all of this inheres, all of whatever it is, there's not a single thought, breath, clod of soil and stone, or any star that isn't consciousness. It's all what I used to call, when I was young, I used to call it candy floss, because it looks like filaments of light. So it's all to be consumed, all to be enjoyed, digested, and allowed to come into form and shine. So it's the how. Now, when we take it to the heart field, you can take any experience, especially we need to take experiences of chaotic disconnection, contraction. And if we program ourselves to immediately something goes wrong, a lost key, a cut finger, a bankruptcy, any kind of thing that the mind, what I call Mr. Frosty Breath, the mind, my words for, says this is a disaster, this is terrible, what have you done now? What pothole? And it's not like that. It activates the choice, and which needs to be developed. That we have choice in everything, every single situation, we have a choice. And as we expand that ability to make a choice in the midst of a apparent disaster, we become clearer and clearer. And so it is, as I said often, it is either easy or impossible. So if you try to play in the third house only as Rahu in the third house, and don't open to the other aspect, the other aspects of the heart field, the ability to put your head through the world like the alchemists did. They're still looking into space, mind you. There's still a world out there. They're looking through the ceiling in that lovely picture, you know, of putting your head through the rainbow and the ceiling of the world. It's still a world out there in outer space. We have to go into that inner space that doesn't actually get affected by circumstances, doesn't allow itself to be moved from by any disaster, any apparent disaster. Judge not, lest you be judged. So it's a question of, oh, that's curious. Oh, I'm supposed to be at this appointment in half an hour and I've got no key. Oh, now what do I do? Like you were saying earlier on, you know, in your experience, perhaps you share that, it's very easy to put your hand on your heart, you activate the heart frequency, but you only know that when you've got a frame of reference of practicing. And if we don't practice it, the doorway of the practice of breathing the door open, or just seeing it open, or knowing it's there, because it's not coming through the immediate senses. You have to develop it. So you tell us about your story, Gary.
Yeah, I'd love to, because it basically shows how what we've been talking about now the last few weeks is really resonating with me, obviously, and it's working as well, like in practice. So my car broke down basically, and I was there having to get it towed. But normally that would be quite like stressful for me, at least, you know. And it was a stressful situation. But I did take a minute, and I put my hand on my heart, and I just came into that space, and then it all went like a breeze, like you said. So I want to that image you gave me earlier about the breeze, I think is really interesting.
Oh yes, shall I say it?
Yeah.
What did I say? I was speaking to someone and I said it's oh yeah, the whole world, your whole life is a pattern of drifting clouds. And you are the breeze. You can realize you are the breeze which blows the clouds into the shape of your choice.
Mm. That's literally what it felt like I was doing. I was like, okay, I have a choice here. And this is very relevant in terms of Rahu in the third house, because astrologically that is seen to be a very good place to put Rahu, because it puts all our will and effort into making changes, positive changes. And that's why it's said to be an upachaya house, the, where it just means growth or improvement. So Rahu does well in these upachaya houses. There are a few of them. And the third house is the first one, where it's like we put a lot of effort in and we make changes, positive changes. So it is actually seen as a good placement for Rahu.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just reflecting on that. I'm just wondering, I've forgotten where my Rahu is.
do you want to know? Or
Yeah.
do you want to share it?
Yeah,
Just 'cause it's interesting. I know, but you don't.
I've forgotten. Well, I probably do if I look at the
It's
chart.
in the third.
That's what I was thinking it
Yeah,
was.
yeah.
Yes.
Maybe, I was obviously waiting for something to like resonate with you with the third, but
Yeah, no, I thought about it before when we were discussing before we started the recording, and I was thinking about, yeah, I think it's the third, but I'm not, because I don't play with it a lot.
mm,
I haven't got it as a clear map. My map, if you like, is playing free fall in the heart field. It's
mm.
not a map even, it's just being there. So I forget the maps, you see.
The map, right? And this is just another map, right? But I mean, you have your own maps. But I'm just wondering, this is really bringing up an interesting question for me, because like now that you resonate more with this third house, and you know, for me, the language that you speak about um choice itself, that's Rahu in the third, you know. I have this question though, and this sense always that it's let me use that example of when my car broke down. So it's kind of like, okay, I just needed to get into a space where I could influence what was going to happen next in a positive way instead of getting all stressed about it, right? That's one side of it. But another side of me thinks that actually that's not the small little Gary me doing anything, actually. It's the small little Gary me quietening down so that it gets in tune with the big me, or the everything and everyone me. And then it just kind of falls in line with what's happening anyway. Would that be?
Yeah, absolutely. And whatever way we describe it, it doesn't really affect the outcome. You we can describe it in all sorts of ways. That's great. But just the practice of placing your hand on your heart, and you are taking your attention to the place where it's easy, where it's done for the little one, where you, the vaster one, makes it harmonious, makes it simple.
But like for me, the question that immediately comes up then is like, because I get all of that and I sense it and I know it because I practice it. But then that, who is the me then blowing the clouds?
Who is the you?
Who is the me blowing the breeze, blowing the clouds?
Well, ultimately, it has to be the realization of that I am not separate. I am a continuum from the no thing, the no place, the prior state, prior to everything in form, all the way into form. Like I move my finger, my hand, and my hand is an extension of my heart. It's interesting. You said that hands and arms are third house as well, but
Mm.
I see my hand as an extension of my heart field. It's in the oval field of in that chest area, and the little buds of the hands, the fingers, start to develop at the same time as the heart starts to beat. So they actually are an expression of the heart field. So
Wow.
if you look at it as the whole of the body, the whole of our life. It's an expression, continuous, no separation. It can't possibly be. Just think about it, even logically, it cannot be other than a flowing into this bubble of time space, an exploration, a pseudopodic periscope, as one of my poems says. A pseudopodic, it's a little, I'm waving my hand around with my finger, poking it into the bubble of space-time for anyone who's not seeing me. So it has to be that way, but we can't experience it unless we develop the neural pathways and the experiences and the spaces of connecting with the unknown, the unseen, the invisible, that we sometimes have flashes of intuition or knowing. And that can be evolved. And as you say, the third house is a space of expansion and growth. So it's an ideal place for expanding that capacity, making the choice, like, I am not just something that eats my dinner and walks around and puts my clothes on and gets a new partner and falls in love and all of those things. It's all great, but it's all expression of the ultimate love affair of consciousness, unmanifest consciousness with itself, falling in love with itself, seeing, oh, what more can I be? Like a baby starts exploring, oh, what more can I do? Oh, if I move, those little things that my mum has hung up here with the mobile, they move and I can touch this and I can put my fingers in the electric sockets and I can, well, whatever you can do, you know? So this whole existence is rooted in the movement of consciousness to embody and enjoy and play and explore. And when you know that, you don't feel that separation or that, or you can develop that sense of being in union with the original impulse to embody. And you know you're never alone, you're never separate. This movement to take charge of everything, to control, which leads to contraction, that kind of falls away. So
that makes so much sense. And for me, I love that imagery of not just the image, it's that sense of the arms, the grasping, the reaching, moving from the heart space. You know, that makes so much sense to me. Like you were saying, but we were talking about before about the mind being rooted in the heart, but also movement from the heart. Like even the way we speak, we use our hands.
yes,
Or when we want something, we grab it as a baby, right? You know, that's how we start searching around. But it's like that for me, because of course everything I understand, I frame around astrological everything, right? So it's like third house into fourth house into. You'll see here my camera for the well, it's only us two watching each other, but I have this AI camera. This is another third house thing, and if I make certain gesticulations like this, we'll zoom in, and I do it like I don't realize I'm doing it, and if I'm on a Zoom call, it will actually just keep zooming in and out, and then if I do this, it'll start following me around the room. It's amazing how, because that's the other thing about third house. It's all about tech and machines and how we engage with like Zoom now. Everyone's on Zoom. So I'd love to talk about that a bit as well, like Rahu in the third, how we are, and we are in the future going to be more and more tech. You know, we're going to be wearing tech. We're going to be in it all the time. How do we, in that state, be open to the vastness of who we are when we're kind of in it at the same time we're just watching heads bobbing around on a screen? Do you know what I mean?
yeah, no, I totally understand. It's going to be even more necessary or imperative, really, to know our origin, to know where we originate, to know the state. It's not a place, it's more a state, a kind of frequency, a field. And to know that we originate, we are the desire or the unseen, unfelt desire of consciousness to the movement, to embody, to create and play. And so even all the automatic tech stuff It's still the play of consciousness, the leela of consciousness. Interesting that Rahu is the play. Really lovely to be reminded that my Rahu is in the third house, because I talk about not workshops, but play shops. And the whole of life is not, people say, I'm working on that. I'm working. It's not. I'm exploring, I'm inquiring, I'm curious, I'm playing. Whole of life is a leela, that lovely Sanskrit word, then play, tale,
Mm, mm.
story. So
And that's actually what the sign, Gemini, which is the natural third sign. Anyway, Gemini is all about. In Western astrology, it's often seen as the twins, but in India, they look at it as the lovers, male and female, or masculine and feminine, whatever. So it's like the polarities coming together, emerging.
that union of opposites, which is the ultimate love affair of everything, as you put the two together, there's a power release, like electricity, you put two wires, or any two opposites. So when we get, this is really, really essential, when we get a moment that apparently has come randomly into our life, of an accident, or let's say something simple, little cut finger, and then when we root in that heart field, when we do that, we realize that only consciousness is activated. Only. There isn't another force which cuts across and disturbs us. It's actually saying, wake up. What you going to choose? Are you going to stay running around in circles? And when this little game of putting your hand on your heart, it's not so much of a game, but it's a little signal to your mind to shift gear and go to the easy place. And when you've trained yourself often enough, like you just explained, I mean, I have so many of those experiences I knew from experiencing it in therapy sessions. And I was doing the therapy when I was a facilitator. But then I started playing with it all the time. And it was a realization of the ease. You just have to remember, and it's simple. That's why it's either easy, or if you're doing in total contraction, you just go further in down the rabbit hole, down and down. The Insuency spider I spoke about last time. And so, yeah.
It seems to me that because I have an experience just recently about, and again, it's this thing of, am I doing this consciously? I mean, or I'm just making this more conscious, that I'm getting more and more tense and stressed because I'm looking for that relief at the end. But sometimes, like yesterday, I was doing this group thing, and it was like I was in my head the whole 2 hours I was doing it. Like I was conscious of that. I was staying in my head. And it just so happened to be it was a Rahu class as well. That was the other thing. And it's kind of like I was invoking that energy. And it took me ages to wind down from that, first of all, because I wasn't resting in the heart, and I didn't sleep well last night either because of it. So I wasn't embodying it, and I knew I wasn't. And even though I was invoking that and I knew what I was doing, it seems to me that it wasn't. Then I stayed so long in that space that I couldn't just tune out of it very quickly or easily. It didn't rest at all night. Do you know what I'm saying?
I do. I totally understand. So it's really excellent to be in the habit of not thinking about it, or am I in my head, or that, and just gently putting your hand here, or even just a fingertip, or if you're driving the car and you can't, just thinking about it, but just to be able to put a fingertip touching the middle of your chest, it's not going to look odd or feel odd to people who are not playing with that, but it roots you into the space of becoming genius, mind rooted in the heart, regularly practicing it moment by moment, or having intention, I don't know, to put your hand on your heart every time you go through a doorway, or every time you drink water, or every time you go to the loo, but making a few little points that you know are going to happen and linking them. You can train your neural pathways to root you, because staying rooted with attention, you don't have to put your mind there. You can just put your finger here and your body gets it and will relax. And the key is allow. put your attention a tiny bit, carry on thinking, but then your mind is automatically illumined by that frequency. And your breath comes more easily. And you remember to allow the embodiment. It's a very simple, basic practice. In fact, it's so simple. I remember very early on in facilitating in this way. One of my clients rang me up the next day after a session, and she said, "Oh, what was my homework? What was I supposed to do?" I said, "Hand, heart, put them together." The loop is completed because, as we said, the hand, the fingers are the heart in expression. You touch with your fingers that space, and it's enough to, you don't have to think about any particular spot or acupressure point or anything. It's the intention. And you will find that your mind gradually becomes permeated with that frequency and is automatically stress-free because it doesn't have to make that effort. And it's so useful when you're facilitating. Well, it's not more than useful, it becomes absolutely essential. You don't have to think.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But
I'm doing it now as you're speaking, and what I'm realizing is that normally when I'm speaking, there is, like, I guess a lot of people have a sense of, well, when is it my turn to talk? when am I going to speak? So it's not really listening. That's the other thing about the third house. And Rahu in the third could be, not being listening. But as I'm listening to you now with my hand on my heart, it's, first of all, like you say, it's tension free, stress free, and also I'm able to listen and engage more with you. And it's not about trying to think about what's next. So that's what I'm sensing right now.
It's the namaste place. When you are in that place, or that state, not place really, but it's like a location in the body. When I'm in that place and you're in that place, there's only one of us. I suspect that what we discussed at the beginning of how to play podcast game with not interrupting each other.
So, and I'm sure listeners will have gathered that there is kind of a change in the dynamic now, because it's not a coincidence that we have discussed how do we engage in an audio fashion, where we have this like new etiquette now with different audio platforms, podcasts and all, Clubhouse app and all of that, where people are having this kind of back and forth. But it's not like you're with someone in a physical space necessarily, because you might not even see the person. So how do you know when to stop? You're not getting the physical cue. We are now, thankfully, because we're doing a Zoom, so we can see each other, we can gesticulate. But normally, if you're on an audio platform, there has to be this new etiquette now of, okay, oh, that's all I have to say, or something, and then the other person knows when to start speaking. But that's not normal in a sense. When we engage, we're normally in physical space with each other.
Yeah, we don't pass the talking stick, so to speak.
Right. Right.
Some kind of way, but obviously this new way of communicating and living, where we're doing an awful lot more on Zoom or whatever platform you use, and if you're not resting fully in the heart, and if you're not fully in that place of the namaste, then we do get crisscrosses, interruptings and things, but we're learning. We're playing with this new way of engaging with others. And if this third house is all about relationship, it's an ideal time to be playing with it.
Right. I mean, that's the thing. It's like, this is just the new rules of engagement or whatever it might be. But of course, there's plenty of examples. If you ever tuned into a Clubhouse session, which is basically an audio app, like a social media audio app, where people just go have this back and forth. There's a lot of disagreement. There are a lot of people just disagreeing with each other, and it's actually not pleasant to listen to either. So there's that side of it. There's that's the Rahu side of it, because that's kind of like the Rahu side of it, of I just want to get my opinion across, and I'm not going to listen to what you have to say about it.
What came to me just now is that Okay, so we have two hands. I'm holding up my two hands now. And those two hands, with proprioception, know how to touch the fingers and put themselves together. When there's an interrupt or a less harmonious connection within somebody's body, some with maybe multiple sclerosis or muscular sclerosis or something like that, and they can't quite get their hands together, or you know, it's very interesting because it's a bit like that. Uh, Certainly, what the chaos that's going on in the world at the moment, it doesn't really flow. And when attention is coming from the place where there's only one consciousness, not two, not 100,000, not the Tower of Babel, but one. And if we trained in education, well, children already know. I mean, they do know, but they also have to learn. We also have to learn how to be fully human from that space. If we are looking at circumstances to reflect to us what we are, instead of referring to the origin, then yeah, we do crisscross, we do interrupt, there is conflict. It was meant to be contrast for fun, like colors rather than one bright light. So
Right, like a mix of colors. Yeah, because for me, while I'm speaking to you now, and just because this conversation is about communication, I'm very conscious of resting in the heart space, so that when I do that, I can sense that it flows a lot more. As in, I can listen to you easier, and therefore, when I listen to you, really listen to you, I can then engage with you better and know when to speak and not to speak. But if I'm not listening to you, obviously, I'm not in my heart. I'm in my head, like trying to express my opinion. Like, I'm not listening to you, basically. Just it that, like you say, there's no flow.
and not listening to ourselves either, because really I'm a reflection of you, and so we end up being fragmented. I remember quoting to someone this morning that quote from the Popol Vuh: "There's no pleasure greater than coming back to life again after having been torn to pieces."
Mm.
And
I
that
know.
describes where we are necessarily going with the chaos that we're experiencing globally.
And like in terms of that, then, because everybody now is what they're calling like jaded with Zoom meetings and so on. What is that then? Is it just their like that disconnect they're talking about now? I just cannot wait to be in the same space as people, And this whole thing about, oh, I'm more introverted, so I don't mind so much, or I'm more extroverted, so I really need to be with people. What is going on there in terms of the disconnect?
I suspect that we all have to, each one of us, explore that for ourselves. And I know that I felt at the beginning very curious and deprived. That's a few years ago when we started to do more of this interacting on the net. But I've discovered you can have a slightly different but totally nourishing experience of connecting with yourself when you pace yourself with Zoom and Messenger and on all of those different platforms. I can't say, because we're still all exploring. We're at cutting edge. And that word Kishori
Mm.
that I called myself. Well, Osho gave me the name. It
Mm.
just means singer and dancer who will never grow old. Someone who is playing and is always new. This incredible mystery that we have in the life that's ever ancient and ever new. And it's always like the wave rising and breaking, rising and breaking. It's always in every breath, renewing itself. And if we go into head, disconnected from body, we don't know that we don't taste that knack of feet on floor or whatever parts connecting with the surfaces, the chair or whatever, and embodied. It's totally possible to be nourished continually by the flow from the heart, wherever we are, whether we're looking at a forest of trees or apparently a computer screen. There's only one thing to see. And yes, we can start looking at electromagnetic fields and influences, but it's all of a piece. Did I remember? Did I tell you about going to hear Fritjof Capra speak? Many,
No.
Tower physics. Oh, I must have been in my, oh God, 50, 60 years ago more, and he was talking about the Tower physics. I don't remember the subject exactly, but I came out. I was in Victoria, and I stood looking at the school opposite near the Houses of Parliament, and I remember to this day, I think, oh wow, I can stand in front of a nuclear explosion and be unmoved. And that's where we as humanity are going. Because I knew then that this is a hologram. It's like my realization, it's holographic. Yes, we want to experience the solidity of this virtual experience, but I know we are moving towards this sense of particle physics and the flow of the wave of life, and being able to bilocate, being able to move the particles so we can dissolve, and like in Star Trek, or like like Yogananda's guru, like Bhavati, or whatever we can imagine. There is no fiction. So anything that we can imagine, like I'm imagining in some way through the electrical charges of this screen, that I'm sitting in a room looking at you, looking at Gary. But what's really going on? And we don't know we don't fully experience. We know, but we don't fully experience what body is capable of doing as evolution happens. We don't know. But anything that any other has experienced in a story or an autobiography or whatever, it's all possible. It's all possible. All we have to do is open up the neural pathways, root in our source, and be curious.
That for me is like one of the main words of Gemini, and the third sign, the third house, is curiosity. That's it.
Me.
Kishori.
Kishori. But Kishori is a state. It is a name. If you actually look at the names that people are given, and sometimes people change their names or get given a different name by a guru. A name is a description of a state. If we choose to anchor in that state, saying, I am. And if I am is your name or your state, your fundamental essence state, then what difficulty is there? You come from that so new, whatever situation, whatever apparent tight corner, whatever complication you might encounter with in 3D land, in this story world, when we acquire that knack of resting in the unknown, in the invisible, in what people used to call God, universe, whatever you want to call it, even those are words, forms, but that nothing, if you like, the prior state, then we rest in that, then we can create or imagine or define from the quantum state anything. How can there be any conflict then if everyone is reminded that they are, whether it's an educational system or whether it's, I don't know, parents, teachers, if we all, even a few of us, it doesn't take everybody, it takes one or a few, as Jesus said, few gathered together in my name, not necessarily Jesus. Jesus is another state. And everybody is a particular state. So, I play a game called Invisible Mentors that you choose. So you don't have guides, you choose your mentors. You go, yeah, okay. I'm not going through all that now, but yeah.
I have the sense a lot of, and this is resonate with what you're saying. I imagine that there's the heart space. I can go to that still space, that like no tension space.
Yes.
But at the same time, and there's that duality, I suppose, as well of Gemini. At the same time, I know that It's like Osho said, there are as many worlds as there are minds, right? So it's like, and we have this sense, I have it all the time, where it's almost like little doorways open in my mind where, oh, this, if I went down that doorway, this would open up for me. And if I went down that doorway, this would open up. And everything here is possible. And it's like, how do we, you know what I mean? If you're not in the heart space, you could be just like the saying goes, curiosity killed the cat, right? What if you just end up going down all of these routes where actually maybe you shouldn't go down?
Well, you should. I don't know.
Well, you
yeah.
should go down or shouldn't.
Well, I don't know. We could say should, shouldn't.
But this is what I'm curious about, because that's the sense of, for me, it's like, if there are as many worlds as there are minds, it's like I know I do have a choice in terms of what door I'm going to open and go into, and open that doorway into that world for a while. And if I do this and I do this, or whatever, I don't even have to do anything. It's just there for me, right? I have that sense. But at the same time, it's like, is it my choice or isn't it? Like, am I making this choice?
As we go on exploring these questions that you're asking, that many people who inquire can be drawn to inquire in this way, the realization comes, the literal realization of what you are, not necessarily who you are. That's your choice. That's the becoming bit. But the being, what am I? What am I? You can't really speak of it. You can do your best. You can try. It's a koan. But if you go to the heart and follow your bliss, as Campbell said, or your pleasure, your joy, your love, and you stay with, oh, that door today, or that meal on the menu today, or that, we have to be really precise about defining. And you can only be really truly precise when you come from that no place. Otherwise you're scattered, or torn to pieces, as the Popol Vuh calls it. And the way to navigate this life of samsara, the way to navigate is to come from that place where the navigation is done by the bigger you, the vaster you, the you that is before and beyond space-time. It's still you. You are, so look, I am my finger. If I'm lifting my right hand now and I'm pointing my finger, I can be my imagination, my heart, my breath. I can be that mystery that is before and beyond space-time. And I can be at the tip of this finger, expressing. And I'm all of it. I'm a continuum. That's why the moment I'm playing a lot with people, there is no death. What is death? Death is an experience. There is no end. It looks like death because it's within this bubble of space-time. But when the realization happens and the neural pathways open up more and more and more, the realization, I am, is all there is. I am that I am. And then the fun bit is bringing that into form with my superpowers. I mean, I am seems to the little me a superpower. Wow. And when you get skilled at playing with in the heart field, from the heart field, that's how miracles, or people raised from the dead, all those stories that we hear. That's how it happens. They get so practiced at it. Yeah. Magic.
Magic. It is magic. And I do feel like this conversation has really, even though I was quite tired before we started speaking, and I didn't sleep last night very well, but I do feel like I'm in this kind of more buoyant, childlike, curious, playful state now, which feels really nice.
That's the nourishing, you see. That's we're going back to last time we talked, looking at food. Man does not live by bread alone. We don't actually need food. I mean, while we believe that, of course we do. But there is something else which brings us into form, that nourishes, that is endless, no beginning and no end. And so it's totally magical. Living as a heart field, merging with every situation that rises. in order to dissolve, to completely consume. You know, digestion is a wonderful metaphor for consuming life,
Mm.
so that we shine, but we don't burn up like we do if we're doing it from the limited self. But we have to be the continuum. It's not one or the other, it's a continuum. And as I said, mind and body then become genius and free and flowing and fluid. But it's a it's a practice, you know, to begin with, until it becomes automatic. You know, I did say that this is about relationship. I did say I was going to share with you a little practice.
Oh yes, please. The practice on the heart.
It's only
Yes,
about 5 minutes, but
heart
anybody,
communication. Yes.
sorry, I interrupted you.
No, 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 don't worry, please. We're not going to get it perfect. And this is the lesson of Rahu in the third, isn't it? And for me also, like we talked about last week, I have Rahu in the second. So for me, it's always trying to figure out, when do I speak, when do I not? You know, it's a bit of a balance for me, and I can go out of balance sometimes, but I'm playing with all the time. And again, for me today, this sense, and I know you're going to talk about this now more, but that even just the sense of, and you directing me to the heart as we engage, as we interact, it's almost like like there's that engagement going on, like it's an intercourse in a way. It's not a physical intercourse, but it's an intercourse, and I feel like I can rest in the heart and have that intercourse.
Yes, we can do both at the same time.
Mm.
We can be the vastness, the not informed, and that's how the new humanity is moving to birth itself. It's not yet born. I've said this often. We are not yet born. Like that beautiful poem of Louis MacNeice, you know, I'm not yet born, oh hear me, you know,
Mm.
it's a magical thing to realize. I remember the first time I ever realized that the world is not solid. Oh my God. I can remember it being like, wow. And I remember when I was 14, at the beginnings of it happened, the first initiation, I remember, and going around just touching everything, feeling it's solid, but it's not. The leaves of the privet hedge I walked by in the street, I was 14, or the pavement, or I'm going out and my body flying at night and looking at it all and realizing it's just a luminous field. But more than that, the game of the formless moving into form. It's not just something you read about in books and Bibles and scriptures. It's what we're playing with. And it's so easily accessible and immediate. But you do have to practice from the desire to explore it. And the easiest way is to not play games in your head, not do anything, but just put your hand on your heart and go, okay, and body gets it. And every single time, this is something I used to tell my clients at the beginning, every single time you repeat that gesture, you are training your neural pathways to follow that route. It increases. And that's why it's a third house thing as well. The ability to access the heart field or to be the heart field increases every time.
Mm.
It's magical.
Magical. I love it. I love it. So, are you going to do that
Oh, yeah, I will.
short
Sorry.
practice with us?
I will.
Yeah.
So we have a world, let's say we have a relationship, two people, and there's a feeling of incompleteness or anger or irritation or separation or grief because somebody's apparently died. And all of that can easily be resolved. There's a little practice. So you set up the room. You can do this as an inner visualization or experience, imagination, or you can do it with two chairs or two cushions in a room, right? So you begin by setting up the room, inviting the person who, let's suppose I have a friend that I've had an argument with, right? And inviting a friend to come and sit on the other chair, and I'm on this chair. And behind the chairs, you imagine whatever you like, a super being, a being of light, a being from the heart field, anybody that you know, or some guru, or whatever, an angel, anything. It's got to be some unbiased, really conscious intelligence. And so each one has got a mentor, a supporter, an advocate. And that has metaphorically got a hand on the back of the heart, the spine behind the heart. It's a very important place, spine behind the heart. And we can use the mind to play with that as well. So it's a very steadying place. You imagine somebody now with a hand on the back of your heart, somebody that is totally, totally dedicated to supporting you. And they put their hand on the back of your heart. Wow, doesn't it feel good? Yeah, okay. So then you are having a conversation. I might say, okay, Mary, we fell out last week and I want to talk to you. Thank you for coming, and all that normal conversation. I express what I want to her, and it's totally safe to say anything. You can scream, shout, swear, whatever you want. Then I hand over to her, give her the talking stick, and she does the same. So maybe 3 or 4 times you can be communicating in the average disconnected way that when we're projecting onto another, that we do, that humans do, and we have a conflict. When we get tired of that, because we will, everybody gets tired of and you've said as much as you want to say, then you then fall into the heart field. You've made the choice, you put your hand on your heart, and if you've forgotten, you go to the being behind you and you ask for a reminder, you remember that being, and you put your hand on your heart. And then you start to look with the eyes of the heart at the person, the reflection, because it's only a reflection. Intellectually, you know that. If you've done any practice at all, you know it is. And you put your attention from the heart onto the heart. You find that little point of light, which I call the heart star, which is the practice of merging of the heart stars. And you start to focus on that person in the state of being the heart field. And as a deep relaxation takes place, and you start to be very curious about the effects. Sometimes you will see the other become illumined, all sorts of things. And then you swap. If you want to, you can practice moving from chair to chair as you're playing with it. This is just a little rough outline, but moving from chair to chair as you take on the identity of the other, that sometimes helps to give voice to it, just moving your body. So let's imagine I move to sit in the place of Mary now, and I'm imagining a facilitator saying, okay, Mary, you've heard what Kishori had to say. Now, what would you like to say? And but this time she's tired, so she puts her attention on the heart field, that little point of light, putting your finger on it like an ET finger, little ET finger glowing, and you touch, and then you go backwards and forwards with that experience. It doesn't take more than one go. If it seems to, because you're in your mind, you might do it 2 or 3 times. But what happens is, many, many different things happen. It's for people to explore and see what their experience is. But one thing is that there's a meeting of the lines of light in the middle. There's a namaste position happens. The third thing is experienced. And then there's an experience of being non-separate, the non-separate state. And all of that, those words that have happened of disconnect and argument or grief, it's very, very lovely with grief for a loss, because you realize that, how can I lose? I am that. I am. So it's a way of enlightening, or bringing into an embodied, enlightened state, a particular experience. And so it completely bypasses that grief. I mean, I'm explaining about it, but if anyone that's listening wants to play with it, you just play and follow the instructions or the feeling, the impulse, the keala of your heart. Keala is a Bengali word that means spontaneous impulse of the heart, or fancy or whim. And you follow the whim of your heart, and you let yourself be directed by the heart in the whole thing. You have to express all that is not expressed. or enough of it, so that you feel heard and that both aspects of you feel heard, because it's all you. There's only projection in the whole thing anyway. But to bring that into experience rather than an intellectual knowledge, you play this little game. And at the end, there is no separation. It takes a little practice, and that's one of the things that I play with, as well as the what I said, the Invisible Mentors game. Many games. They're all games that have been shown me, and I've explored and expanded them. So
that for me is just the perfect expression of Rahu in the third. It's like engaging with the contracted state, the separation, the projection, especially engaging with it fully, and like with Rahu, going there and just doing it until it's done, but then turning it around and opening it up, and that just for me is like the best of both worlds.
The helpful thing is to set up an imaginary room or space, and both of you have a being of light, your full presence, or an archangel, or anything you want. Superman. Kids put Superman or Wonder Woman or something, and it's fine. And that hand behind your heart of that super being or that super state really helps in the expression, not to get completely drowned in the expression of grief or anger or whatever it is. And it's like, Daridra Dukkha Danaya Namah Shivaya, delivering me from Shiva, from all of this pain, suffering. That's the way. It's the freedom from disease and pain and suffering. That's the way to go. And it's so simple.
It's so simple, but until you just mentioned Shiva there, I have to say, struggling to actually think about who or what deity, what image or what could I conjure up beside me or behind me to put, because it's a very powerful image, putting their hand on the back of your heart. But I couldn't actually come up with it. Actually, I just had this white light image.
That's all right.
Yeah. But then when you said Shiva, I was like, okay, actually, yes, that's a blue, calm, and meditative Shiva, just putting his stern hand on the back of my heart. That feels for me right to me at the moment, anyway.
Then there you are. You've got your super being, your ultimate mentor.
A bit like Superman in the Hindu pantheon, isn't he?
Yes. Yeah.
That's amazing. Thank you. I really want to actually play with that.
Yes.
Look, I've been using your language now. It's great, because before I might have said the word work with that. I would have said, oh, I'd love to work with that, but no, I want to play with that.
Exactly, because play is that playful curiosity of having a look and seeing what, and because you don't exactly know what it's going to taste like or be like until you've experienced it. And that is what the pure consciousness, formless, let's call it the formless self, moving towards. There will always be, nothing can come to an end. There will always be an expression of some kind, because it's not in time. So there will always be some movement into this dimension. I mean, there are myriads of other ones, but nothing can come to an end, because it's all in consciousness. It's evolving. It's having a great time. That space is having a great time, playing and exploring. Completely magical. That little perception shift from encountering something like a car breakdown to being a magical portal to take you to, like Dorothy clicking her heels on the yellow brick road. From any moment, it can be easy, can be impossible. But you are
the more and more we talk, the more I'm not just, because I understood it obviously from the very first time we spoke, but now I'm embodying it more and more. I mean, it's like you said, the more you put your hand on your heart, the more the neural pathways will. I'm even in this conversation, because I've had my hand on my heart for most of this conversation. Yeah. It just feels like something is happening.
Yes.
More and more and more.
Yes.
So I look forward to more and more Rahu in this way with you.
And to tell you, one of the lovely things of writing is that kind of lyrical, luminous state in some people telling stories, and it feels like you're really there. And poetry, the rhythm of poetry, expressing what is unexpressible in poetry. And I'm just about to publish one of the 6 books I've got on the go.
Yes. Which one?
The one that might the gathering in of some poetry over the years. Not Rahu. Rahu's on the list
For later, yeah.
Rahu, but the poems, the one I Am a Hologram, and My Ocean Mind, and things like that. But I've gathered a selection, and I think we're calling it Glimpses of Treasure Island. EYE, what I see. That's coming. But those games that I call games, you could call them exercises. It's what I love. I'm always making new ones. It's always being revealed to me new games, new ways, new portals, new explorations of what is, and then to embody them. So we can never tire. You remember that little quote? And they shall mount up on wings as eagles, and they shall run and not fail. This is the end times. It's not the end of the world, it's the end of the struggle. And we are going through the chaos. So as the chaos rises, we make our choice. And at the moment, it's very chaotic. But when enough people go, oh, for goodness sake, I'm absolutely tired of this now. And they start saying, oh, okay, let's see what difference. And I know that I'm stopping being a voice crying in the wilderness and saying, listen, guys, it's very simple. And there are lots more games and lots more videos, lots more things. Yeah, I do stuff with people and groups, but it's all there. If you want to, it's all for the asking. So thank you, my dear Gary.
Thank you. I've really enjoyed this.
Talking with you.
Yeah, likewise. I really and I look forward to the next time. It'll be a bit longer, I think, the next one because I'm away for those 2 weeks. But next time, Rahu in the 4th, which is the heart, actually.
Yes.
It's literally the heart space. So, but we could talk more about that in astrology, what the 4th house represents: the mother, the home, well-being, all of these things, and what it would mean in the contracted state. Rahu in the 4th, perhaps with one thing I've noticed with people thinking that it's going to take some outward something or other, the perfect whatever, to be happy, chasing something always. Rahu is like chasing.
Yes.
Instead of realizing that there's that inner joy that's always present, like we're touching on now. It's like that's the thing with Rahu in the 4th. Oftentimes I see it in those who have it where they are. It's like happiness is this thing that they have to get, and if they're thinking they have to get it, that it's telling themselves subconsciously, whether or not, that they don't have it and they're not happy therefore.
It's our natural state. It's our original state is happiness, is playfulness, is the big joke. It's the fun of finding out, like a baby, exploring what it is, what it can do. That's what consciousness is. And one line is, and baby I seeing only itself as it awakens in form. That's what it is. It's a baby. It's the aeon. The baby is awakening.
So I look forward to that next time. And I also just need to kind of I don't need to do anything, but I feel like there's this sense that I have from speaking with you always anyway, and I've just got it really strongly this time. And I don't know, is it just because I put my hand on my heart as we've spoken? I don't know. It could be all of that. But I feel like I want to take this with me into the rest of the day and play with this more and more and more. So I know it'll be a few weeks before we speak again, but hopefully when we do that, I will have played with this on retreat as well and report back. I feel like, I've got something to report then, it's like, my car broke down the other day, Kishori. Oh, but I put my hand on my heart and, it's kind of like I'm playing with it,
And isn't it fun to have somebody else that's interested and going, yeah. It's like learning to, I don't know, skydive or surf or something that you would think you can't do.
That's exactly it, because the thing is that most people don't express interest in the inner thing, in this thing. They talk about the interests that they have. And this is the other thing about the 3rd house, in fact, that it's this obsession with what are you into. Like even if you talk about sexually, what are you into?
Yes.
Or what kind of films do you like? What kind of movies? Whatever it is. It's like, it's always an external thing.
But it's all of a piece, as long as we don't cut it off. It's what you love, that particular taste of that strawberry, or that particular feeling of that the cheek of somebody that you love, or that particular sensation, or I don't know, the feeling of the flesh of a snowdrop when you stroke it, or it's the tiniest little detail, and it's the vastness of it, and the relief. That's another lovely word. The relief of knowing that you are absolutely not alone, and yet you are totally sovereign of your life, because that way the new humanity is evolving. It has to evolve out of this chaos. It has to. I mean, it's a natural state of evolution to wake up to what we are. Anyway, my dear.
Thank you so much. I just feel a bit emotional as well at the moment. So maybe, I don't know, something you said there just kind of really, it's like I feel like there's waves coming over me.
The relief.
So, yeah, relief. Yeah, that's exactly it. That's the relief, and it feels like also the tears could start flowing in a minute. So maybe we should end this call. I don't want to do like a crying on the podcast.
So sorry to have cut that podcast short. I mean, we had finished up anyway, we were just saying our goodbyes, but I really did feel like I could have had a bit of a cry then. Thank you all so much again for listening, if you've listened all the way through, and you can always reach out to Kishori and discover more about her writing. Especially, she's writing a few books that she's now publishing in the next while. Go to magicmakeover.com. That's magick-makeover.com. My own website here is timelineastrology.com. You can also find me at patreon.com/timelineastrology. I write daily reports as well as monthly forecasts for patrons, and I produce monthly video horoscopes. So you can have a look there, sign up, and just go a bit deeper with the astrology. Next time, we're going to talk all about Rahu in the 4th house. I look forward to that. And until next time.